emerging growth companies group. We're a global law firm. We have offices in over 70 countries. One of our hallmarks is a really deep commitment to tech across all sectors. You know, we're going to be talking to you about why acquire, why now today, and M&A to us as a law firm is seen as a terrific way for companies to grow and scale quickly. Things have to happen quickly in the tech environment, and you know, consolidation as well with other companies and businesses. Another tremendous thing to accomplish through M&A, together with attracting and retaining top talent. So a solid acquisition strategy makes all kinds of sense for most clients that we see.
Perfect. Sureel, I'll pass it to you.
Perfect. And my internet just went out, of course, right at this point. Can you hear me okay?
We can.
Perfect. Hi. To be on this panel with Michelle, Alon, and David. My name is Sureel Sheth. I'm a principal with JMI Equity based in San Diego. We're a B2B software-focused private equity firm, primarily focused on growth stage companies. So beyond kind of early product market fit, but really partnering with founders and management teams to help them scale their businesses, both organically and then very topical today, inorganically as well. We invest primarily in North America. We've made 150 investments over the last 25 plus years, and currently have a portfolio of about 30 companies. And then one good note for this SaaS North conference, we've made about 15 investments north of the border in Canada. Two companies I work with, Point Click Care, a healthcare IT company in Mississauga, and then Clio, which was a more recent investment we made in Vancouver, which is in the legal practice management software space. So conversation and to dig in with you all.
Great, thanks, Sureel. Happy to have you. And Alon from Google, you're up.
Hi there. I'm Alon. I'm a strategy lead on the corporate development team at Google. So the corp dev team here primarily focuses on acquisitions, strategic investments, and partnerships on behalf of Google and all the Alphabet companies. We've done a number of deals. Frankly, we continue to do a number of deals on an annual basis and deployed a couple $2 billion of capital just in the last few years alone across a mix of very large scale acquisitions, including Fitbit and Looker that you may have seen in the news, all the way down to smaller acquires and investments. My specific role here is to sit across the hardware, search, ads, and a few Alphabet teams, including Google X and Waymo, really helping them understand what's happening in the market, who are the targets that we should be engaging with, how can we partner earlier to understand where there may be alignment between our two organizations, and then channel them to the right teams internally. We are also very excited about Canada. One of my mandates for this year was to spend a bit more time out there and get to know more companies and investors. Unfortunately, that was a little tough to do in person, but excited to be here with you all.
Great, thanks, Alon. So let's jump right in. We don't have that much time, so we want to kind of hit the ground running. We've seen, M&A activity was a little hotter before COVID. Obviously, we're hearing some things are heating up again. But let's start with a little bit of a landscape analysis of what the trends and opportunities look like. So David, I'm going to start with you. Maybe you can give us an overview just to kind of help set the tone for some of the things that we'll dive into the details on a little bit later on in the panel. What are the trends and opportunities that you're seeing?
Yeah, and it's interesting, Michelle, you talk about pre-pandemic. Of course, things have really changed dramatically since then. There's so many people saying everything old is new again, and other sayings that are coming out of the woodwork as we all try to stay current with the new normal. The tech sector is so fast-paced that all of our abilities to pivot quickly, I think it's really serving the tech sector well in reacting to what's going on. But for sure, there's a number of themes we're seeing consistently coming through on new deals. First of all, I know there's some debate about this, but we are seeing valuations dropping, and for businesses that means the ones that are in acquisition mode, there may be more value that can be looked at coming out of a particular transaction, or there may be an opportunity to revisit another target that might have been priced out of reach previously before the pandemic took hold and valuations came under pressure. Also, valuation means existing shareholders may be, a little bit less keen on bringing in new financing because there's going to be added dilution that comes with that. And so companies that maybe weren't so interested in entertaining an offer previously may be a little more receptive to looking at an M&A transaction right now. There for sure is continued great emphasis on scaling products, quickly getting them built out, quickly completing and broadening service offerings. Really hard to do that organically, and so acquisitions, of course, really provide an opportunity to quickly consolidate and maybe jump ahead of a few other challenges and/or keep out in front of competitors. So the pace of the tech sector and what everyone's being asked to do in terms of accelerating that pace, I think it's really important to look at acquisitions as a key component of meeting that challenge. And then I would say finally, like we all are, investors and top talent are just nervous, and so a solid acquisition strategy can help mitigate a bit of risk for an investor in terms of moving ahead with capital, investing fresh capital. Also, our sector is so much about top talent, and so I think that talent is concerned about companies trying to do everything organically, and a good acquisition strategy can mitigate that risk as well. So I think it really adds to not only retaining top talent, but attracting top talent to begin with. So those are some of the themes for sure that we're seeing consistently coming across our meetings with clients.
Great. Yeah, I think those are all very valid points. I know we're starting to see some of the same things as we look at our own portfolio and any new investments that we make. Sureel, maybe I'll pass that same question on to you, just as you're thinking about it from a bit of a different vantage point.
Sure.
What are some of the trends and opportunities that you're seeing at JMI, and as you kind of look both in Canada and the US?
Yeah, good question, Michelle. And David, I wish I had the same purview as you, where valuations were going down. You mentioned it's a point to debate. Just in our world, in growth equity, we've kind of seen the opposite, and I'll nuance it a little bit. I think what's happened in the growth equity world is the company, there's kind of a haves and have-nots that have kind of formed in terms of fundability, I would say. So companies that are looking to raise, there's those that have good enough solid business metrics that are attracting a lot of investor appetite, given supply of capital is still there. And there's others that just based off their current business models or business metrics are unable to raise. And so there's a scarcity value, I think, to some of the assets that can raise, which is driving up valuations in our world. But what I would agree with you is, on the M&A front, especially for our companies looking to acquire, the tone has changed a little bit. And I think, companies historically may have looked at M&A as, kind of the punching out, or it's a bad thing. This is not, the end outcome we hoped for. Well, what we've seen a lot, especially with companies that have great products, but maybe lacking on the funding to really, have a distribution channel or a solid go-to-market. The framing of their mindset is more, okay, we have a great product, we have good product market fit. How do we accelerate that, under the umbrella of another company? And I think that mentality shift, especially for product first companies, has started to become more prevalent in what we've seen over the last 6 months, where folks say, hey, I can't raise the amount of capital that I wanted to, but we clearly have good traction in the market. Maybe there's a way creatively to partner with either a competitor of ours, or more usually a partner of ours that already distributes our product, or we have the same end customers, and the 1 + 1 can be much greater than 2, if that makes sense. So I think to some, Michelle, we're seeing valuations quite high, but on M&A for acquisitions for our portfolio companies, there's a better rationality, I'd say, to folks saying, hey, what's the medium to longer term goal of my company versus the immediate goal of fundraising at a higher value.
Yeah, and well, I think there's sort of both sides to that coin too. If you think about how you're going to be able to raise to fuel scale in an environment where you just might not have all the elements to be able to scale.
Sure.
What you're talking about, Sureel, it kind of dovetails into the, kind of a partnership theme. And if we think about working with, Alon, you at Google, and we think about that as a part of the acquisition strategy, what are you seeing in terms of trends and opportunities? And then I want to kind of dovetail into the partner conversation.
Sure. I can even give you a preview of our answer on the partnership side. So generally, before we do any kind of acquisition, we do an analysis internally to look at the buy, build, and partner scenario. And if there's an opportunity for us to partner with a company and potentially do an investment as a way to bolster that relationship and give us a chance to get to know the founding team and make sure that the integration, would look good post-acquisition, then generally that's a path that we'll definitely think about. On our side, we've continued to focus on three main drivers for acquisitions. One is tech, the second is talent, and then the final one is business. So, tech meaning there may be some component that we can take and integrate into our existing product suite that allows us to accelerate or deliver better service to our end user. Talent, to the extent that we might find great teams that have experience working together, particularly in some of the more innovative areas that we've been building product out in. An example of that might be the HTC carve-out or acquisition that we did several years ago, where we brought several hundred folks from HTC into Google to focus specifically on building out our hardware strategy. And then on the business side, we tend to look for relatively mature businesses that could be good supplements to our existing product suite. So cloud would be a good example area of that, where we acquired a company like Looker to add capabilities to our broader cloud infrastructure offering and make a more compelling value proposition to our consumers. We've definitely noticed a couple of trends within those themes. So as an example, for companies that have had some difficulty fundraising or have seen the business climate change that, such that their business has had significant growing challenges, we continue to be excited to look at those companies and potentially acquire those teams, even just for the team and the experience. And then on the trend side, the things that we've been tracking most closely are acceleration impacts to some of the areas that we've been focused on. So as an example, no surprise, e-commerce has taken off in the last year or so, given that most people are stuck at home, now looking for new ways of getting the same type of products that they've had in the past, not just physical goods, but even digital services, right? Things like fitness classes that previously were done somewhat on the internet, but mostly in person, now have had to shift much more to a web-based ecosystem. And so we're constantly looking at ways that we can support that, whether that's internal organic build plans or acquiring teams with great technology or user bases in those areas.
Okay, great. That's amazing. I know we've looked at and we've got some partnerships with Google already on a couple of things. But if we do flip it around, I know, in prior years, SaaS North's audience there've been a lot of earlier stage companies that are looking to really build and scale, looking for those partner opportunities with a Google, with maybe, Sureel, some of your bigger companies in your portfolio. If we think about the scale to be acquired, what are, Alon, you talked about it just very briefly, but maybe dive a little bit deeper. What are some of the key things that you're looking for when you think about the perfect company that you're going to acquire? And at what stage would you be thinking about that? And then I'm going to come back to you, Sureel and David.
Sure, and it really does run the full gamut. So I'm working on a deal now where we're acquiring essentially a little bit of technology that a company has developed and 5 folks from that business. And that ranges all the way up to multi-billion-dollar acquisitions like Fitbit and Looker. So the things that we tend to look for really do vary depending on the product area. So cloud, as an example, is an area that's looking more for scale and large products that already have established user bases to fill out the roadmap. In other areas, we may have smaller needs where we're trying to build, let's say, an API for a particular product and looking for a team that has significant experience doing that. And in that case, it's not necessarily about buying what they've already built, but really bringing the team over so that they can rebuild that in a way that's native to Google's internal architecture. So we really do look across the board. As far as some maybe advice for early stage founders, some of the things that we tend to look for are extremely strong talent. As part of the M&A process, we definitely do a lot of diligence around specific individuals in the company. If it's a talent-driven deal, then we'll try to actually interview everyone and subject them to the full Google hiring process. So we keep that talent bar quite high. Beyond that, I'd also encourage you to think about how you build a strong foundation inside the company, especially around the code, the culture, the security infrastructure that you have. As you can imagine, big tech companies, Google included, have been very focused on how we preserve security for our systems, privacy for our consumers, make sure that no data leakages exist. Things like that are definitely very high priorities as part of our diligence process. And then beyond that, to the extent that you can build relationships with Google in advance of an acquisition discussion, that's also very helpful, particularly with the teams that you would potentially sit or partner with inside of Google. And that's also an area where Corp Dev is really designed to be a facilitator. So if you're an early stage company looking to find a way to partner, we can be a bridge and help you navigate to the right teams. It doesn't necessarily have to be an acquisition or investment discussion. It could just be, hey, we have a product. We think there's a potentially strong partnership for Google. Can you help us find the right person just to even assess the opportunity? And we've done that in many, many cases.
And finding the right person is half the battle. Usually you're running around looking for somebody and you never find them, right? So, Sureel, you bring a bit of a different frame of mind and perspective to this. So if you're thinking about that possible acquisition, what does it look like to you?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, we use a fairly simple, framework. And Alon, I liked your, the tech talent and then kind of, cloud or product or business you're acquire. Typically, and we will do acquire type acquisitions, but most of the time our acquisitions are either acquiring a business, right, that either sells into the same customer base, but may allow for a different product into that base. Sometimes it's the opposite. It's a different customer base with a similar product. When we think about just the risk profile for, the execution of the acquisition. So if you think about, a company that's a direct competitor, right, that competes, sells into the same customer base with the same product, though, there's a lot of people-based friction usually in those relationships because those folks have, kind of competed for many years. The risk of the acquisition tends to be lower because you know what you're kind of getting, beside in terms of the market and the end buyers. There's other types of acquisitions we look at that are highly transformational, which are higher risk. It could be an expansion of the customer base. You're moving into a new market with a slightly different product, so you have more degrees of uncertainty. And so what I would say, just the unifying theme on all these types of acquisitions we look at, and it ties to what Alon's saying, is the relationship and the people part of all this matters a heck of a lot. And folks are going to do diligence in different ways, look at different numbers, business metrics. But at the end of the day, for a lot of our companies, having a pre-existing relationship, either formally through, hey, we have a business partnership, or even two founders or two CEOs that have gotten to know one another over many years, is very helpful to even having that first discussion. And being kind of productive and constructive in those first conversations. So it's not our company's better than yours or vice versa, but really how can the sum of these two companies be better for our customers, better for our employees, and better for the market overall. And so I guess just tying it back to folks that are running earlier stage companies or even more advanced companies, my advice would be be in the market. And I know there's only 24 hours in a day and it's hard running a business, but allocating time to within the market you're in or the ecosystem you play in, being relevant, I think that's a good first step. Just having folks know what your product is, what the vision you're bringing to the world is, because it makes those first conversations a heck of a lot easier.
Yeah, no, well, we're all in the relationship business at the end of the day, whether it's with our investor, our partner, our lawyer. We use our legal teams quite a bit. David, I know that you see and are continuing to see a lot of transactions across your desk, but what's Sureel and Alon have really shared is around the development of the partnership to facilitate those kinds of acquisitions. I know you share a lot of potential leads and things like that also, but from your perspective, what do you see?
Yeah, well, and it's really good advice coming from Alon and Sureel. What they're not saying is that I think is that at any given time, these two individuals and their firms have a pile of opportunities that they're looking at. And so I think it's really important to be mindful of who your audience is, and that you want to differentiate yourself and stand out for the right reasons. And of course, the corollary to that is you don't want to stand out for the wrong reasons, because with all those other opportunities on their desks, you don't want to make it easy for one of them to decide that, maybe I'll put this a little bit further down in my pile, or I'll put it on the side where maybe it needs a little more work. And for me, as a lawyer, things that do get in the way of an investor or an acquirer quickly looking at you are just can be housekeeping things. That making sure that your chain of ownership and your IP is clean, or as clean as it can be. And we've talked a lot about talent. Make sure that your core team is locked down and completely a member of your business going forward, and committed to that, so that when Alon puts your employees through the full Google treatment, they're going to be completely committed to the entire process and know what's coming. So some of these things that while you're growing your business, it's maybe harder to focus on because you think of them as housekeeping. All of a sudden, when Sureel and Alon come calling, trying to fix those things, all of a sudden take on much more urgency. Maybe it's harder to get someone to sign a simple piece of paper from 6 months ago because they see, oh, you now need this done. Maybe you're going to have to pay me a little bit more. So paying attention to some of those details and being prepared, I think is really important, and the value comes through once you enter a process like this.
Mm-hmm. And we often, you hear a lot, and certainly if I keep my investor hat on for a second, we always are talking to our companies about when is the right time to think about acquisition, when is the right time to set yourself up for an eventual sale, if that is the strategy that you're going for. But the road is always fraught with funny things, right? So if you were to think about an M&A transaction, Sureel, I'll come to you first, an M&A transaction that went wrong, or where there would be an automatic no to do that transaction, to facilitate it, even if it's right at the very end. What are the automatic no's for you with respect to M&A at any stage of the process?
Yeah, I think it starts with the customer. If we do diligence in a process and find out either that the company's customers are unhappy, or this type of combination would put that at risk, right? And that ties into David's point to revenues and all the things you're acquiring. That's usually a red flag for us, where it's and sometimes that's not obvious, right? Sometimes it's you gotta do the market work to say, hey, would this combination be attractive to the end market? What are all the external forces that wouldn't want this to happen? Other competitors that may, blast it in the market saying this is a bad thing for customers. But starting there, and then I think it comes back to the team alignment and the team kind of cultural melding, and that starts with usually the two leaders of the companies or the leadership teams. But especially in these smaller companies. Most of our companies, are still small. Even our biggest companies are tens or hundreds of millions of revenue. They're not billion-dollar companies like Google. And so they're sensitive to all these things. And having two cultures come together where there's a lot of friction and a lot of negativity in that way. It generally, for us, given we're investing in high growth businesses, can be at least a yellow flag and sometimes a red flag.
Yeah, for sure. And what about you, Alon, when you're thinking about the automatic no? I'm sure you see a deluge of companies knocking on your door on a regular basis, waving their hands in the air.
Yeah, and we try to at least give them all some airtime and evaluate the opportunities. I'd say it generally falls to the tech and talent that we see a lot of the issues. On the tech side, for example, if it's unclear who owns the IP or whether it's even transferable in the first place, that can be a red flag for us. Or if there are some meaningful security or privacy concerns, especially those that could expose data from consumers, then those things can be a challenge. On the talent side, we certainly want to make sure that the talent, again, meets our bar. And so one area where we've seen some challenges is we put teams through the rigorous hiring and recruiting process here, and let's say a significant portion of them don't meet that bar. Then if it's a talent-driven deal especially, it may be hard to move forward on the transaction.
So David, it sounds like talent is one of the keys. Are there any other elements of a transaction when it hits your desk as you're starting to get involved where there might be an issue?
Well, keying off of what Alon and Sureel have just been talking about, I would just say general lack of transparency. Regardless of which side of the fence you're on as either an acquirer or a target, if there are issues or challenges up front, whether along some of the lines that we've been talking about with talent and IP or other things, it's much better to be upfront and build trust with that and deal with it as part of a negotiation instead of as a target. Fingers crossed that maybe it won't be discovered. It will, and then in the time it's taken to solve it, maybe your acquirer has shifted gears a little bit, or for sure is going to be taking a harder look at everything. And you just don't want things that will have to be addressed to hijack the process, which should be a positive experience for everyone.
Yeah, for sure. And as we wrap up, it's too bad this is coming to an end so quickly because I have lots of other questions for all of you. As we wrap up, maybe Alon, we'll start with you. What's the one piece of advice you would give our audience today?
I'd say try to be thoughtful about where specifically there could be an opportunity to partner with Google, if that's the goal. And so when you're reaching out to someone, whether it's myself or someone on the product team, have some kind of prepped notes about where you see an opportunity, so that you can guide that conversation and make sure that it's most productive.
Great. And Sureel?
Yeah, I would say I like Alon's point, and being very tight on the messaging of your company and where it could fit into other companies in any conversation is a good thing. And then the other piece I'd say is being very open-minded about M&A. I think there's a lot of connotation that comes with M&A. My company's being taken, or barbarians at the gate, all this stuff. Like, M&A can be really a positive thing for a lot of companies, especially ones where they have a great product but are lacking the investment really in the company to take the company to the next level. And so I think just open-mindedness on that going into conversations can lead to a lot of goodness coming from it.
Perfect. And David?
I would just say quickly, as a early stage company, as you're developing and thinking about getting into acquisition mode, follow your customers and pay attention closely to what's going on in the market. Don't try to be the tail wagging the dog. Pay attention and realize that you're part of a business and you need to service your customers, and that's really gonna hold you in terrific stead going forward.
Perfect. Well, thanks very much, gentlemen, for joining me today here at SAS North. It's been a pleasure, and everybody else, enjoy your afternoon.
Thank you, Michelle. Thank you all.
Thanks, Michelle. Thanks all.